Hello and welcome back to another episode of Finn and Joe's British Show. We have just worked out that this is episode number 8. So welcome back to the show. Joe, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. I'm managing to cope in this very cold, very nippy weather here in the UK, which might be very different from the climate and weather that Finn is experiencing right now.
Yeah, so I've kept the same background as last week because it's a very nice background, but I'm actually in Mexico. In order to get the right lighting for this podcast, I couldn't have a nice natural background for you unless you wanted to look at a microwave and a fridge behind me. But yes, I am in Mexico and it is approximately 26 or 27 degrees, which is probably about 26 or 27 degrees hotter than where it is where you are, Joe.
Yeah, it's absolutely freezing here. I think here in Derby it's been about 2, maybe 3 degrees, and this morning it was about -3. So very, very different to what you're experiencing at the moment.
Yeah, but in classic British style, I think I've been complaining a little bit about it. It's a little bit too hot for me. Luckily, during the peak hours of the day, so the middle of the day, I can hide away inside a little bit and be out in the mornings and the afternoons when it's a little bit cooler, when it's a little bit of a nicer temperature.
So, our show today is looking at some of the weird behavior that Brits do and we promote as native speakers. And behavior is something that can really, really influence how native speakers see you. So, in today's episode, we're going to explore some of the behaviors that you might do without realizing it, which might rub some native speakers up the wrong way. That might irritate or annoy them. Okay.
Yeah, so well, just to start with, I think one good thing is, Joe, you have mentioned before on the show that your girlfriend is Ukrainian, and I think it's very typical of kind of Eastern European languages. And I'm just thinking, even with maybe it's everybody apart from Brits, about just being, well, what we consider kind of rude and direct. I think that's kind of a very general one, a big general one to start with. So, do you want to elaborate on that one a little bit
Hmm.
more?
So generally, this is a big feature of the Eastern Europeans. They're very direct, very to the point. And unfortunately, with a lot of the languages like Ukrainian or Russian, uh, their language and their sentence and word order is very flexible. So they could move words around and it'd be perfectly okay. However, in British English, it's a bit more rigid, bit more strict when we're actually saying things. So generally, a lot of my students who are Russian or Ukrainian, I'll often hear things like "give me, please," when ordering things, which to a Brit can sound a bit rude, a bit direct. So generally, native speakers, we try and soften saying. So one of the most common you will hear if you live in the UK, if you visit the UK, is sorry. So sorry, we don't just say it to apologize, to make our language sound more politer. So if you're in a coffee shop and you're ordering a coffee, don't be worried or confused if you hear a Brit starting their request with "sorry, can I have?" or "sorry, can I get?"
Yeah, yeah, we use it in so many different ways, and it's almost like, excuse me. You might hear a Brit say, excuse me, and sorry in the same sentence, but I think I'm very guilty of saying sorry a lot, even when I really don't need to. If I'm just a little bit maybe worried or apprehensive that I have done something wrong or upset someone or I have come across rude. So I've kind of appeared rude, which I think we are very careful of. We're very cautious of coming across like that. So we just say sorry to, like you said, to soften it to make it seem a little bit nicer.
So the other thing that can really irritate Brits is not following the etiquette when it comes to queuing. So a queue is what British people call a line. So a line of people. So we call it a queue. And the action of queuing, we say to queue up. And queuing behavior, queuing etiquette is a huge part of our culture. And as a native speaker, as a Brit, we really like people to respect this. So when you're in a queue, we don't like it when you try and move a place in front of you or move a place in front of someone else. This is called jumping the queue. And if you queue jump, Brits won't directly tell you off. They won't reprimand you. You might get an eye roll, you might get a tut, or they tend to complain about you to the person next to them. Usually like, oh, did you see them? Oh, they queue jumped. Oh, I can't believe they jumped in, they pushed. Um, Sometimes a Brit might go away from being British and be very direct. They're like, oi, there's a queue here. That's normally the last resort. I don't know. What do you reckon, Finn?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the person, but generally it will be a lot more indirect. But you get a lot of maybe unhappy people or very confident people that will give it the British oi, like you said. And this kind of situation happens the other day, well, related to queuing anyway. We were all queuing up to get on a ferry because I'm on an island right now. So we had to get a ferry from the mainland, and there were lots of people queuing up, but the ferry was full. They couldn't fit anybody else on the ferry. So they had another one, I guess, a backup one, a spare one, a secondary one, I don't know. But the guy tried to get everybody to turn around in the same uh, order and kind of go and line up for the other ferry so that it was fair. But he said it in Spanish, and there's a lot of people that didn't understand Spanish, but there was also just a lot of people, so not everybody heard him. And it ended up just being a massive swarm of people. And because we were relatively near the front, we ended up kind of at the back. And I was saying to my mate, like, if this was the UK, if everybody here was British, we probably would have maintained a bit more of a queue because I think it's just a bit more natural. It's just our instinct to line up to form a queue, instead of kind of just swarming and fighting to try and get on there first.
That's a huge part of like British behavior, isn't it? It's like if you go to a foreign country and you see a crowd of people, like just like in like a bubble, a Brit will naturally try and make some level of like order to that bubble and form a queue, even if there isn't a queue. And you can definitely pick out a Brit abroad because they will naturally want to stand in a line, whereas everyone else is sort of in a huddle. So that is something to be careful with if you come to the UK. We like to queue. And if you follow this queuing etiquette, you'll be perfectly fine. Another thing, another behavior that British people don't particularly like is if you are having a phone conversation, at taking a phone call and speaking really loudly on public transport, on a bus, on a train. Um, why do you think this is, Finn? Like, as a native speaker, yes, it can be quite annoying, but what is it about people speaking loudly on public transport? Why Brits hate it so much?
I don't know, actually. I guess maybe it's just kind of an indirect invasion of your personal space. So I think, especially compared to, say, Spanish and French and Portuguese people that are very, and Italians that are very huggy, and when they greet each other, it's kisses on the cheek. Whereas for us, it's very much not anything like that. That is way too kind of personal, way too close. So maybe it's to do with that personal space, that privacy, that invasion of your personal bubble, you might say. And even though it's not directly physical invasion of your personal space, it's kind of in a way it's just noise, it's someone else's actions entering your bubble.
Hmm. Is for me personally, as a I would say it's like a two-way thing. So, um, you are having your privacy, your calmness, your quietness invaded by that noise, which is annoying. But on a flip side, you feel that the person who is shouting down the phone or speaking really loudly, you feel you are entering a private moment that you shouldn't be listening in on. So generally, it causes a lot of second-hand embarrassment, a lot of awkwardness. And Brits are like, okay, should I say anything? Should I say anything? And if you know British people, we don't really want to complain. Again, if we hear someone shouting at the phone, we tend to just like stare them out indirectly or do a few like passing glances at the person and like maybe roll your eyes, but we never really deal with the situation because native Brits hate conflict.
Yeah, I think most of us try to be as passive as possible and try to hint or suggest that whatever they're doing is not appropriate for the context. So, yeah, we like to avoid it as much as possible. And if we can get them to stop doing whatever they're doing just by a few side eyes or a few kind of death stares, which is just staring at someone very, very intensely, and then yeah, we'll do that.
Mm. And I think probably the most important behavior type is one that a lot of non-natives, when they first come to the UK, whether it's to live or to travel, is this fear of speaking. And unfortunately, for a lot of natives here in the UK, generally there's this perception of non-natives if they come into the country and don't make an effort to speak. There develops this level of intolerance, which unfortunately happens from time to time in the UK and probably happens in different countries as well, because we're very proud of our language. In a way, we are quite, I don't know, we like to hoard our language. And if we travel, British people love other people to speak English, which is a bit weird. It's a bit hypocritical, if I'm honest. Um, but when people come to the UK, we really like you to speak English. We don't care if you make grammar mistakes, if you use the wrong tense, but just to hear you try to speak the language makes us relax and probably gives you more time with native speakers. We take into account if English isn't your first language and we give you space and time, and we're more encouraging than if you don't speak to us in English.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So I think generally as a population, it's kind of similar with different dialects of English as well. Everybody that is an English speaker, not everybody, but many English speakers, most English speakers are monolingual. So we only speak one language, and I would say most of us are maybe quite rude, or a lot of people can be very ignorant and arrogant when they go abroad and they expect people to speak and understand English, and they get frustrated when somebody else doesn't speak English, even though their country is over 100 miles away, and well, over 1,000 miles away or whatever, and it that really grinds my gears. It winds my watch. It annoys me because, like you say, it's very hypocritical. When people come to our country, we expect them to speak English. And again, we almost get more annoyed when they don't speak English. But then on the other side, on the other hand, when somebody is trying to speak English and they are visibly struggling with it, but you can see it is making them uncomfortable, but they are making an effort, they're really trying, then most Brits will generally be very sympathetic towards that.
Mm. And this is a huge problem, a huge problem because generally most people when they're learning English, they worry about the wrong things. They worry about learning perfect grammar, forming perfect sentences, learning slangs, learning idioms, learning phrasal verbs, when in reality it's about the mentality of native speakers, which should be the priority. So if you come to the UK, it's more important to learn about the culture and learn about why Brits do certain things, why we behave in a certain way, why do we expect certain behavior, why do we have certain etiquette that we prefer you guys to follow. That will really help you when it integrating in cultures. And I think Finn, you're in Mexico, and I think the Mexicans would probably agree with a lot of that sentiment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm in a very touristy area right now, so there are a lot of people that do speak English and they're very happy about it. And there's a lot of people that I have heard speak. And as an English teacher, I can't help but pick up on mistakes and notice every single tiny detail. And they make so many mistakes, but it doesn't matter because we can understand everything that they're saying or the point that they're trying to say. And I really notice how confident they are compared to how many mistakes they're making. And it's like they're making loads of mistakes, or maybe I'll put it this way around. So it's confidence up here, but language level down here. And I think the problem that most people have, or most English learners have, is that it's the other way around. So their language level is actually really good. They can read, listen, write, understand everything that they see and they do and what they want to other than speak. They just can't speak because their confidence is all the way down here.
Hmm. And going back to my previous point, I think most native speakers, I would say the majority of native speakers, we don't care if you make mistakes. We don't care if your grammar's wrong. If you ever listen to a native speaker, our grammar's all over the place. It's sloppy. We make mistakes, but we still get our point across. And that is something to consider, guys. If you ever come to the UK, if you speak with a native speaker, if you visit the UK, we genuinely don't care about your mistakes. What we want to do is we want to get to know you, we want to form these relationships, and we want to hear you. That is the key thing.
Yeah, and I think one thing to add to that, or one thing that kind of helps that or emphasizes it, is politeness, being polite. So you said before about Ukrainians and Eastern European languages being very direct and when asking for something, almost giving an instruction, like give me this please or send me this please. When for us that sounds quite rude, but if you're saying a lot of thank yous and if you say please multiple times and you're asking and you're not kind of instructing or demanding anything, if you really try to ask and say please and say sorry and say thank you, then that's when a Brit will be extra sympathetic towards you.
Mm. And that is really good point to end there. And I think generally, just as a last point, if people are polite, people say please, people say thank you. We're not looking for advanced English here. very basic manners. So if you can say please, you can say thank you can use softening language like sorry or would you mind or is it possible? These kinds of things. Brits will really warm to you very quickly, and this will have the knock-on effect of you having a far more enjoyable time living and visiting the UK.
Yeah, for sure. And I think facial expressions and maybe hand movements are a big part of that as well. If because I guess facial expressions are almost half the language, half what you're trying to say. It helps the tone, helps, I guess, your intonation even. Um, so it really helps people understand whether you're coming from a polite place, you're requesting in a kind way, and you don't want to bother us or be rude to us rather than just being very straight faced, very monotone, very direct, and kind of just giving a demand.
So I think that is a really good point to end this episode. So as with every episode that we put out, please, if you haven't already, please like our channel. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and our Instagram handles, I think, will be somewhere down here. So if you haven't checked out our Instagrams, feel free to have a gander, have a look at the kind of things that we do in our everyday teaching. So I think that's it from me. Have you got anything to add, Finn?
No, that's it. I think if you have a topic that you really, really want us to talk about, then please leave it in the comments below, and we will definitely get around to speaking about it. But yeah, that's it from me as well. So thank you guys for watching, and we look forward to, well, we won't see you next week. We look forward to seeing the numbers of you hearing us next week.
See you,
I will see you later.
see you later, guys.